ത്രിയേക ദൈവത്തിന് ധന്യതരനാമം മോത്തപ്പെടുമാറാകട്ടെ. ബഹുമാനപ്പെട്ട ഐസക്കച്ചൻ, കർത്താവിൽ അനുഗ്രഹിക്കപ്പെട്ടവരെ, പെന്തിക്കോസ്തി പെരുന്നാൾ കഴിഞ്ഞ ദിവസങ്ങളാണ്. പെന്തിക്കോസ്തി ശനിയാഴ്ച സന്ധ്യയുടെ സന്ധ്യാപ്രാർത്ഥന കഴിഞ്ഞിട്ട്, സന്ധ്യാപ്രാർത്ഥനയുടെ ഇടയിൽ ഒരു പ്രാർത്ഥനയുണ്ട്. റോമിയോൻ സുതര കഴിഞ്ഞിട്ട് എത്രോയിൽ ഇപ്രകാരം എഴുതിയിട്ടുണ്ട്: കർത്താവെ, ഞങ്ങളെല്ലാവരുടെയും ബോധങ്ങളിലും ഹൃദയങ്ങളിലും ശുഭമായിരിക്കുന്ന നിന്റെ ആത്മാവിനെ പുതുക്കണമേ. ഞങ്ങളെല്ലാവരുടെയും ബോധങ്ങളിലും ഹൃദയങ്ങളിലും ശുഭമായിരിക്കുന്ന നിന്റെ ആത്മാവിനെ പുതുക്കണമേ. പഴയ മനുഷ്യന്റെ സകല മോഹങ്ങളെയും ഞങ്ങളിൽ നിന്ന് സദാ ഹനിച്ചു നീക്കണമേ. നിന്റെ സ്മരണയിൽ നിത്യവും പുതുക്കപ്പെടുന്ന പുതുമനുഷ്യരായി ഞങ്ങളെ നിർമ്മിക്കണമേ. നിന്റെ സ്മരണയിൽ നിത്യവും പുതുക്കപ്പെടുന്ന പുതുമനുഷ്യരായി ഞങ്ങളെ നിർമ്മിക്കണമേ. ഓരോ പെന്തിക്കോസ്തി പെരുന്നാളിൽ നമ്മൾ സംബന്ധിക്കുമ്പോൾ നമ്മുടെ പഴയ മനുഷ്യന്റെ ആ മായാമോഹങ്ങളെല്ലാം നീക്കി നിന്റെ പരിശുദ്ധാത്മാവ് ഞങ്ങളുടെ ഉള്ളിലുണ്ട്, അതിനെ പുതുക്കം പ്രാപിക്കുവാൻ ഞങ്ങളെ ശക്തീകരിക്കണമേ എന്നുള്ള പ്രാർത്ഥനയാണ്. പ്രത്യേകിച്ച് ഓരോ വർഷവും നമ്മൾ സംബന്ധിക്കുമ്പോൾ നമ്മളൊരു ആചാരമായിട്ടത് സംബന്ധിക്കാതെ അതിൻ്റെ അർത്ഥം മനസ്സിലാക്കി എന്തിനാണ് നമ്മൾ സംബന്ധിക്കുന്നത് എന്ന് മനസ്സിലാക്കിക്കൊണ്ട് ചെയ്യുമ്പോൾ അതിന് കൂടുതൽ ഒരു മീനിങ് നമ്മുടെ ജീവിതത്തിൽ ഉണ്ടാകും. ഞങ്ങളെല്ലാവരുടെയും ബോധങ്ങളിലും ഹൃദയങ്ങളിലും ശുഭമായിരിക്കുന്ന നിന്റെ ആത്മാവിനെ പുതുക്കണമേ. നമ്മുടെ ഉള്ളിൽ, എല്ലാവരുടെയും ഉള്ളിൽ പരിശുദ്ധാത്മാവുണ്ട്. അതിനെ പുതുക്കം പ്രാപിക്കുന്ന ഒരു പ്രോസസ്സായിട്ട് നിങ്ങൾ ഈ ആക്കോലൈറ്റ് അല്ലെങ്കിൽ ശുശ്രൂഷകൻ ധൂപറ്റി എടുക്കുമ്പോൾ ഇടയ്ക്കൊക്കെ അതിൻ്റെ ചാരമൊക്കെ എടുത്ത് കളഞ്ഞില്ലെങ്കിൽ, അത് ക്ലീൻ ചെയ്തില്ലെങ്കിൽ അതിന് ഈ സുഗന്ധധൂപം ഇല്ലെങ്കിൽ കുന്തിരിക്കം ഇടുമ്പോൾ അതിന് പുകയ്ക്കാനുള്ള കപ്പാസിറ്റി കാണുകയില്ല. എന്ന് പറഞ്ഞാൽ ആ കനലിൽ അതിന് there won't be fire in that coal. അതിന് മാറ്റുന്നത്, removing the ashes frequently is really important. അതുപോലെയാണ് നമ്മുടെ ആത്മീയ ജീവിതം. നമ്മുടെ ആത്മീയ ജീവിതത്തിൽ നമ്മുടെ ഹൃദയത്തിൽ പറ്റിക്കിടക്കുന്ന ആ ആഷസ് ഒക്കെ മാറ്റുവാൻ പ്രത്യേകിച്ച് കുമ്പസാരം മുഖാന്തരം വിശുദ്ധ കുർബാനയിലും സംബന്ധിക്കുകയും കൂടുതൽ പ്രാർത്ഥനാ ജീവിതത്തിലൊക്കെ അത് മുഖാന്തരമാകട്ടെ എന്ന് പ്രാർത്ഥിക്കുന്നു. ഇന്ന് ചാപ്റ്റർ 7 ആണ്. ഇത് പഠിപ്പിക്കാൻ എനിക്ക് ഒരു അർഹതയുമില്ല. ഞാനും ഇത് വായിക്കുമ്പോഴാണ് ഞാനും കുറേ കാര്യങ്ങൾ പഠിക്കുന്നത്. ഈ ചാപ്റ്റർ നമ്മൾ പഠിക്കുന്നതിന് മുൻപിൽ, ബിക്കോസ് ഇറ്റ് ടോക്സ് അബൌട്ട് വെർജിനിറ്റി ആൻഡ് മാരേജ്, അത് പൗലോസ്ലീഹ അവര് പല പ്രശ്നങ്ങൾ എഴുതിയിട്ടുണ്ടായിരുന്നു. അതിൽ ഒരു പ്രശ്നമാണ് ലീഡർഷിപ്പിന്റെ ഒരു പ്രശ്നം ഉണ്ടായിരുന്നു. അത് മറ്റ് സ്പിരിച്വൽ ഗിഫ്റ്റ്സിന്റെ ഒക്കെയും വരുന്നുണ്ട്. ഇനിയും തൊട്ട് വരുന്ന ചാപ്റ്റേഴ്സിലെല്ലാം അതൊക്കെ ഡീൽ ചെയ്യുന്നുണ്ട് സെന്റ് പോൾ. ബട്ട് ഹീ സ്റ്റാർട്ടിങ് ഓവർ ഹിയർ വിത്ത് മാരേജ് ആൻഡ് വെർജിനിറ്റി. അതെങ്ങനെ ആയിരിക്കണം നിങ്ങളുടെ ഇടയിൽ? അവിടെ നമ്മൾ കഴിഞ്ഞ ചാപ്റ്ററിൽ മനസ്സിലാക്കി, there were people who അവിടെ ഒരു ഗ്രീക്ക് ഫിലോസഫി ഉണ്ടായിരുന്നു, that body is evil, so whatever you indulge in the body, it is fine. ആ ഒരു തോട്ട് പ്രോസസ് ആയിരുന്നു അവിടെ. ആഫ്രോഡൈറ്റിന്റെ ടെമ്പിൾ ഉണ്ട്, അവിടെ prostitutes ഉണ്ടായിരുന്നു, priestess ഉണ്ടായിരുന്നു. So it was really a immoral city, Corinth. So ആ ഇടയ്ക്കാണ് അങ്ങനത്തെ ഒരു ചിന്താഗതിയുള്ള ആൾക്കാരൊക്കെ അവർ പറയാൻ തുടങ്ങി, then it is better not to get married. സോ ഒരു കൂട്ടർ അവിടെ പറയുന്നുണ്ട്, അവരുടെ ഇടയ്ക്ക് ഒരു ചിന്താഗതി ഉണ്ടായി, ബോഡി ഈസ് ബാഡ്, ഈസ് എ കേജ്, സോ വാട്ട് എവർ വി ഇൻവോൾവ് ഇൻ ഇറ്റ് ഈസ് ഓക്കെ എന്ന് പറഞ്ഞ ഒരു ഗ്രൂപ്പുണ്ട്. They were misusing this freedom. The second thing is, there was a group where they were feeling indulging into sexual activity itself is wrong. So let us totally abstain from it. അങ്ങനെ പഠിപ്പിക്കുന്ന ചിലരുണ്ടായിരുന്നു. So they are writing what is the correct way of life. ഞങ്ങൾ കല്യാണം കഴിക്കാതെ ജീവിക്കണോ, ഇല്ലെങ്കിൽ കല്യാണം കഴിച്ചിട്ട് എങ്ങനെയാണ് ജീവിക്കേണ്ടത്? അതിൻ്റെ ഉത്തരമായിട്ടാണ് ഈ ഒരു അധ്യായം പൗലോസ് അവർക്ക് എഴുതുന്നത്. ഇതിൻ്റെ മുൻപിൽ നമുക്ക് മനസ്സിലാക്കേണ്ട ഒരു കാര്യം, വാട്ട് ഈസ് സെക്ഷുവാലിറ്റി? വാട്ട് ഈസ് സെക്ഷുവാലിറ്റി? അത് നമ്മൾ ആദ്യം മനസ്സിലായാലേ then only we will be able to understand what he really means. So നമ്മുടെ വിശ്വാസം, just like our faith, our sexuality is also important. Yeah, we have the genders. So it is approved by God, and it is guided. It should be guided by the Holy Spirit. And that is the main crux of our spiritual life, that our sexuality should be guided by the Holy Spirit. If it is not guided by the Holy Spirit, then we go astray from God. Then we move into other avenues seeking pleasure. It is not, it can be different kinds of pleasures. So most of the time it has been, the sexuality has been, the term itself has been misused, and it has always been used as a tool to sin rather than to honor God, because we all are created in the image and likeness of God, and this sexuality is something good which is God has given to us for procreation. That is the main essence. For procreation, he has given us the sexuality, and it is only for that purpose that we need to be active. That is the main crux, and but most of the time we misuse our sexuality, we abuse it. So this is something which I just wanted to make you just then the relations which we share, the sexuality and the desire for God, all these are interrelated, especially when we talk about virginity, when we talk about marital life, marriage, marital relationship. In Orthodoxy, there are two ways of life. One is through family life. The other one is the monastic life. ഈ രണ്ട് വഴികളുടെ the main goal എന്ന് പറയുന്നത് theosis ആണ്, to be like God. That is the goal. If you're married, if you're unmarried, the goal of an Orthodox Christian is to attain that theosis, that purification, that perfection, that likeness of God. And in a monastic life, you are to support yourself. You follow the direction of your spiritual father. You have your abbot, you have your the monks around you who should help you to grow and to journey through that path towards theosis. In marital relationship, the spouses should help each other to grow in Christ. That is the main essence. Uh, the husband should help the wife should help the husband to attain that theosis. So basically, what we are saying over here is the husband and wife should be supportive to each other. Only then all these three things come into action: the relationship, the relationality, the sexuality, the desire for God. So all these three things are interrelated. Only when you are in a relationship, in a marital relationship, you have that sexuality. You support your spouse in all the ways, including your sexual relationship. And that in your marital relationship, the aim is to desire for God, to become, to move towards the path of theosis. But now, in the postmodern, in the not just the postmodern, even from, we can see from the book of Genesis about the same sex relationships or homosexuality, which is being uh, becoming prevalent in the modern world. And we we all are aware. This is really a very touchy subject, but I want to uh, put forth, because you all are mothers, and we all have a great responsibility in bringing up the children, to make them understand their gender identity and the sexuality, what is the main reason. So there is a greater role as mothers you need to play, to make our children understand what really God desires, what really God has created each one of us for. Thus, we have chapter 6, verse 13 to 20. We have already last week we read about it, we learned about it. This is something which is really the crux when we look into the sexuality and what reason God has given us this body. And finally, he says, it is not ours. It is not ours. It is a temple of God, and it is not our own. It has been bought by a price. So ഇത് എപ്പോഴും നമ്മൾ മനസ്സിലാക്കേണ്ടതും നമ്മുടെ മക്കൾക്ക് ഇത് പറഞ്ഞു കൊടുക്കുവാനുള്ള. നമ്മൾ പലപ്പോഴും ചിന്തിക്കും, ഓക്കെ, അവർ പ്രായമായി കഴിഞ്ഞിട്ട്, ഇല്ലെങ്കിൽ when they hit the puberty they would slowly understand. But at a very young age, slowly you need to keep on giving them the capsule food, in the form of a capsule food to them. Otherwise, if you are not, there's a lot of technology, there's a lot of people around them where they can get a lot of information. If we don't give them the right information, if we don't give them the information in advance, they have all the facilities and avenues to get the information. So yeah, I think so it is time where the church wakes up and addresses certain issues relating to all these concerns. All our parents, all our families have a concern regarding this for our children. See, the Orthodox Church, it really clearly mentions about the sex and sexuality for within the marital relationship. That is really important. Within the marital relationship, between husband and wife, inverted commas, between husband and wife. That is to express intimate and passionate love to one another, to help the believer fight the passions of lust, to give way to the gift of procreation. So these are the basic understanding, the basic reason, the basic important the church upholds, and it teaches about sex and sexuality. So we get into the chapter, marriage, and he talks about marriage and virginity. So this is the just outline. Marriage is better than burning. So the 1 to 9 verses, I just divided all these into the different topics, where what is important, and the verses from 1 to 9, and 10 to 16, it is allowing a husband or wife to remain living with a non-believing spouse. So I'm going to take only the first aspect for today, which is marriage is better than burning with passion. So verses 1 to 9, it talks about how what about the celibate or the unmarried and the married. 10 to 16 verses, it talks about how the husband or the wife is to remain living with a non-believing spouse. 17 to 24, each one should remain in the same calling in which he was called. Then it is about virginity is better choice, where he talks about that being a single, where you could focus. He's giving his own example where he's saying, hey, I've been traveling, I've been into missionary journeys. If I had a family, it would have been difficult for me. So he's giving his own example, and he's saying virginity is being single is a better choice, where you could focus more on God's work. Man's position towards his virgin, and widows are allowed to do whatsoever they choose. So these are the divisions, and then uh, the first few verses now concerning the matters about which you wrote. It is good for a man not to touch a woman, but because of cases of sexual immorality, each man should have his own wife, and each woman her own husband. The husband should give to his wife what is due her, and likewise the wife to her husband. For the wife does not have authority over her own body, but the husband does. Likewise, the husband does not have authority over his own body, but the wife does. Do not deprive one another, except perhaps by agreement for a set time, to devote yourselves to prayer, and then come together again, so that Satan may not tempt you because of your lack of self control. This I say by my way of concession, not of command. I wish that all were as I myself am, but each has a particular gift from God, one having one kind and another a different. To the unmarried and the widows, I say that it is good for them to remain unmarried as I am. We don't have any record where it says that Paul is married, but we in Acts we read about his nephew. Apart from that, we don't read anywhere else about his family. In Acts of the Apostles, I think so it is on 23 or 26, where he talks about he talks about his nephew. 9. But if they are not practicing self-control, they should marry, for it is better to marry than to be aflame with passion. So till here, I would be focusing today. Now, concerning the things of which you wrote to me. So just like the other concerns which they had about different leaders, about the spiritual gifts, about food offered to idols, about resurrection, about virginity, about marriage. So this is also a concern which they have in their church, and they are writing to them, because writing to St. Paul, because in the previous chapter we have understood that uh, there were people who considered body to be evil, and whatever we indulge in body, it is fine, we have that freedom. and in that way, few of them were misusing the relationships. At the same time, there were others who said we need to totally abstain from the sexual relationship. That means to totally abstain from marriage. And here he says it is good for a man not to touch a woman. The church in Corinth, as we already have seen, uh, we have been noticing that it had divisions, and then we have known about the temple of Aphrodite. Then it has always been observed that they felt that having the temple, having the priestess, having all that immoral life was like a flourishing city. They always thought that to be as a sign of growth, and they always felt that chastity or purity always was, it was not their cup of tea, or they thought that was not at all needed. So in that way, marriage, that was one extreme. The other extreme was, few of them, they saw that marriage was seen as an open adultery, so which was approved by society. So all these issues were there among them, and that is why he's addressing, they wanted him to address what is the right way of life. Do we need to get married? If we are married, how do we live? The second one is, should we live as virgins, or should we live as a celibate? What is the right way of life? He gives his own example, as I said earlier, about his own example, saying that it is good to be, to not to touch a woman, not to be single, so that you could do much more for God if you are into ministry, if you are for God's work. He gives the example that, see, I have been traveling, I have been doing missionary journeys, and if I was hungry, I was a tent maker, and I used to just make tents and live on a meager living. I know to live in riches, I know to live in poverty. So he has faced a lot of things, and he says, if I had a family, it would have been difficult. It would have been a difficult thing for me to do all these things, to travel and to live. Nevertheless, because of sexual immorality, let each man have his own wife, and let each woman have her own husband. So, the main purpose of getting married is not just companionship. We always we always insist our kids uh, that to get married, to have a companion in the old age. That is not only the only reason. So it is much more than just having a companion. It is like a, you both are, the spouses are like the two pillars of the roof called marriage. So uh, that is something which we need to help them understand. So each spouse is responsible for the growth, not just the spiritual growth, even it is just a holistic growth, physically, emotionally, spiritually, intellectually, in all the ways, sociologically, in all the ways. The spouse is like a support system where you need to keep on supporting and encouraging and being responsible for the other person's growth, that most of the time we miss out in marital relationship. We see that only one spouse is really pushing the other spouse to grow. That should be both, from both the sides at the same time, uh, to have a healthy growth. It is uh, not just to compete with someone else. We always have the tendency of comparison, comparing with other couples, other families. But always that growth should be on a positive note, where you grow spiritually. That is, that is for desiring for God, that is for knowing and tasting Him, knowing and to be with Him. The relationship where, even in relationship within the marriage, you need to grow in the relationship. That is, if you have if you have not read Five Love Languages by Gary Chapman, I would encourage you all to read that book, Five Love Languages by Gary Chapman. So he talks about there are five different ways where we communicate love, and each way is each person has a way of communicating love. It can be a few of the people, they understand or they communicate love with when they receive a gift from their spouse, or few of them understand love or they communicate love when their spouse gives words of affirmation, where they say, okay, it was really a tasty food, or thank you for helping me out in this project. That positive wordings always pushing them, making them feel special. All those things should they feel that that is the way they communicate love. So there are five different ways: doing house chores, helping a hand in the doing the laundry. Those are one of the ways where love is communicated. Physical touch is another way, getting into physical intimacy. It is not just sexual relationship, but also just hugging or holding hands and walking in the on all those ways, spending time with your spouse. So you need to, Gary Chapman says that you need to understand what is the way your spouse communicates love. And when you are able to understand that, and when you give, if your spouse really wants quality time, if the wife needs quality time and the husband is always giving positive affirmation, he's saying you really, you're hardworking, your food is good. No, she doesn't need that. She wants you to spend time with her, be with her. That is the only thing which she needs. You might be buying gifts for her, buying whenever you are on your business trips, you buy some souvenirs, get it back and give it to her, but she might not need that. She might need the quality time which you need to spend with her or him. So it is the way we communicate love, which is important. Gary Chapman talks about that. And marriage gives each individual a spouse. Thus, it can prevent sexual immorality and avarice, according to divine knowledge. St. John Chrysostom, as in the beginning, man, though that thought that they are two, look how God attached and united them together to become one flesh by the sacrament of matrimony, saying, therefore a man leaves his father and his mother and be united to his wife, and they become one flesh. So it is, you're no longer two, you're one. So you need to keep on supporting and building each other, which is always in my wedding homilies. I tell the couple, do 10 things every day if you want to have a happy life. It is not going to be easy. It is not a bed of roses, but you could struggle at the same time. If you do 10 things which your spouse likes, there, to a certain extent, you could be having a fruitful life. It should be both the ways. It should be both the ways, not only one-sided, where the wife does everything and the husband is at the receiving end. No, even the husband has to put in the effort. And 10 things which makes your spouse happy. Let the husband, verse 3, let the husband render to his wife the affection due her, and likewise also the wife to her husband. As I said, see, where you both, the couple, the man and the woman, the husband and wife, they are no longer two but one. When they are one, so it is not no longer the body belongs to them, it belongs to the other person. That is what here St. Paul is mentioning about. That is what the holy matrimony talks about, that you no longer, it is your own body, you don't have the authority, but your spouse has it. When we read this, basically they mean that in the light of temptation to commit fornication, each spouse must fulfill his or her sexual obligation to the other. One of the responsibilities of marriage is to provide for the various requirements of the spouse, including sexual needs. So, in looking out of the spouse in a holistic way, that is really important. That is the main essence, that is the main need of the marital relationship. Verse 4, the wife has no authority over her own body. We just read about the same thing, but the husband does. And likewise, the husband has no authority over his own body, but the wife does. The main idea, or the main meaning where St. Paul tries to convey, is that the other spouse is more important. It's not that you're not important, it's not that your space or your time is not important, but when you give more importance and more care, and when you are more care, when you are more concerned, and when you care more about your spouse, and it is the other way around too, marital relationship becomes really much more fruitful, and it would be much more happier, because you're always concerned about the other person, and that itself helps in building up the relationship. It should be always, all these I'm talking about in the context where the husband and the wife are both at the receiving end, in inverted commas, both are at the receiving end. It should be like that. It should be like that, where you are more concerned about your spouse, you take care of her or him, and you provide everything what is needed. And in the same, likewise, when your spouse does the same to you, there there won't be any conflict, there won't be any problems, because you are trying to more and more understand your spouse, you are trying to more and more change or sacrifice. That is the word I would like to always emphasize. In a marital relationship, it is a sacrifice which the spouse does for the other person. Most of the time, our parents, we always ask our kids to adjust in the marital life. No, it is not an adjustment, it is a sacrifice which you have to do, both the ways. Again and again, I emphasize, it should be on the both, should come from the both the sides, both the spouses. So that is the crux of the marital relationship, where you sacrifice, you are more concerned, and you're more caring for the other person. Slowly you're learning about the other person. At the same time, you're unlearning few things which your spouse doesn't like in you, and few things you're learning, you're relearning. You need to learn, unlearn, and relearn in marital relationship. You need to learn what your spouse likes, what your spouse doesn't like. You need to unlearn what your spouse doesn't like in you. You need to relearn, or you need to keep on emphasizing it, what really builds your relationship. That is in every aspect. That is the crux, or that is the fruit of marital relationship. This is something where he also mentions that, okay, when you are doing this, when you're concerned about, when you're concerned about the your spouse, you could slowly move away from sexual immorality or polygamy. You can move away from breaking the law of matrimony. So I would just read out: sexual immorality and polygamy constitute breaking of the law of matrimony, as once each of the two parties in marriage has delivered his body to the other party. He or she has no right to deliver it to a third party. So when you are really uh, caring, really concerned, really sacrificing for your spouse, then the third party will not come into picture in any way. It is only when there is that lack of relationship, the lack of communication, the lack of intimacy, the lack of bonding, it creeps into problems. Verse 5: do not deprive one another except with consent for a time, that you may give yourselves to fasting and prayer, and come together again, so that Satan does not tempt you because of your lack of self control. So, this is regard to the sexual relationship which the spouses should have. And he says prayer and fasting is important, and it is only through consent. You need to be concerned, at the same time you need to have that consent from your spouse, especially during fasting and prayer. It is good always. It is always good to abstain. It is always good to move away from the relationship, especially during fasting, during prayer time, because you are more focused. You are uh, more directing all your energies into becoming a better human being. So then he says it is better for a certain period, that too with consent. And he's saying that he doesn't say that always to abstain totally completely from marital relationship, but to for a certain period, and that too with the consent of your spouse. Three conditions are required for lawful abstinence. It must be by mutual consent, for a good object, and temporary. But I say this as a concession, not as a commandment. So here he says, I want you to abstain, I want you to move away, or it is good that you move away during your fast, during your prayers. And he says, I'm not compelling this one. It depends on each and every one. If someone is really into his spiritual life, if some couples are really into spiritual life and they would like to abstain from it, it's up to them. If someone is really want to abstain for a certain time, it's up to them. So each one has its own his own choice to make. And it is always, as I said, the main aim is always to seek that theosis, that perfection, that divinization. That is the main aim, whether it is in marital relationship or in celibacy. The main aim is to attain that perfection as a concession and not as a divine commandment, lest he who does not keep it would be counted as disobedient to God. It is only meant for those who seek perfection, which is not for all. So this is one of the narrators, he says. But I personally, what I believe is, uh, we all are on a journey towards perfection, and each one has our choice to make. How long can we? It is just like how long can you fast? Few of them can fast for till 12, till 3, till 6. There are people who fast for 3 days, So it all depends on our choice and our willpower, which is important. For I wish that all men were even as I myself. As there's no document whether St. Paul was married or unmarried. Mostly it is said we don't. There's no mention about his family, so uh, we consider him unmarried. But each one has his own gift from God. It is a calling. Each one has a calling. A few of them are called to lead a marital life. Few of them are called to lead a single life. But the aim of both the paths are to seek or to please God. To please God through your marital life, to please God through your single life or your celibate life. So the main aim is the same, but you're taking two different paths. God, for I wish that all men were even as I myself, but each one has his own gift from God, one in this manner and the other in that. As I said earlier, uh, Paul is giving his own example and how it would have been if he was married and how he could travel and even to burn in the with the lust. It is better to get married rather than to burn in the flames. So uh, he's always he's saying it is your choice. You need to make a choice where you want to get married. If you feel like your calling is to get married, just go and get married. Even to the singles, he says the same thing. Rather than if you feel that flame, if you are uh, even when you read the desert fathers, uh, most of the desert fathers, they have faced this temptation of lust. One of the novices, he goes to the elder and he says that I have been struggling with the temptation of lust. What should I do? And this elder, he tells them, see, all through my life and even on my deathbed, he was the elder was about to die, and the disciples, they go and ask for a word and seek advices from him before he is passing away. So he says, till this time, even in my last breath, I have been struggling, but the only way is to always try to uh, cry, try to call on his name and keep crying for help and to say the Jesus prayer. So and he says, no doubt he says about to keep long vigils and fast with prostration. Only through that you would slowly you could there would be you can there you can't allow you can't stop the birds to fly above your head, but you could definitely stop them from building a nest on your head. So there would be that is why watchfulness in the Orthodox, especially in the monastic tradition, they give a lot of emphasis on watchfulness, to have a watchman at the entrance of your mind to regulate what gets into your mind and what's not. So when we have that guard, to put a guard always on our mind and our thoughts, that is that is always needed. Once there were few monks who were traveling and they had to cross a river, and there was a woman at one of the banks, and she wanted to cross the river but she didn't know how, and so she asked the monk, the abbot, whether if he could lift her and cross her the river and get her to the other side, as they had to cross the river. So this abbot, he says, yes, I would definitely help you. And there were a group of monks and the abbot was leading them, and the abbot lifts the woman and carries her crosses the river, uh, and they reach the other side of the river, river bank, and they keep walking. And the one of the monks, he goes and asks the abbot, how could you do this, that you carried the woman and you cross the river, and how could you do that? Is it not a wrong thing to do? So the abbot very wisely he says, I have dropped the woman at the river bank, but you are still carrying her. I have dropped the woman at the river bank, but you are still carrying her. So we need to always be mindful what really gets into our mind. We need to always have a watchman or have a guard. What thought comes in? How long? If you there's a 5 second window. I don't know. Who you when you look into all the influencers or motivational speakers, they always say there's a 5 second window. In that 5 second window, if you say no, the thought will really vanish. But at the same time, it is if you want to hit the gym at morning 5, or you want to get up early in the morning, but your brain doesn't want your body to exercise, but if you, because it always wants to be in the comfort zone. But if you are able to say no, I'm gonna get up, within that 5 seconds it's gonna happen, whatever it is. If you want to gain something, if you want to do something, that 5 second window is really crucial, where if you had to say no, if you say no, that thought will immediately move away. But at the same time, if you say yes, I want to do this, immediately you will start doing that. So that is something which we need to always have in our mind. uh, Paul wanted everyone to live like him, but he knew that everyone couldn't. So everyone has a special gift, everyone has different gifts. And in the following chapters, you could even you they also St. Paul is also addressing this issue, because they had written that a few of them are really healing people, they are talking in tongues. How is it? And how do we respond to that? Is it the correct way? Or so he's going to talk about the gifts of the gifts. But here he's saying everyone has a specific gift, everyone has a different gifts. So and every person's gift is also special. Few of them are called for marital life, few of them are to lead a single life. For I wish that all men are even as I myself, namely practice chastity, not intending to commit them to be within narrow limits by demanding very strict things. He presented only a moderate virtue. St. John Chrysostom. And one of the quotes from St. Augustine, it's the same thing. Uh, each one has his own gifts. So it is more about how much are we able to have the self-control and fight against the vices, which is really important. But I say to the unmarried and to the widows, it is good for them if they remain even as I am. But if they cannot exercise self-control, let them marry, for it is better to marry than to burn with passion. So it's again talking about how we could curb the sexual immorality, and the main essence or the main goal is to have that perfection. No doubt, when we keep struggling, when we keep praying and crying, he's gonna give God is gonna give us the grace to face, to to go through all these temptations, no doubt about it, because he has always been merciful, and he's always uh, one of the fathers, they talk about Christian life is always full of trials and tribulations, because uh, all these virtues, Where can you practice? You can practice when you are in a community. How can you practice love? You can practice love when there is hatred, when there are people around you who really don't like you, who backstab you, who really hate you. There you could be a messenger of peace. You could be a messenger of love, where you could in turn show them your love. And that is where we can practice. No doubt, even in the deserts, they have been practicing all these virtues through different ways. But when we are living in the society, when we are living in the families, that is the best place for us to practice all the virtues, to be patient, to have that peace, to have that kindness, to have that charity, so to have that self-control. So it is the best platform for each one of us to fight, to struggle our Christian life. We most of the time we think, okay, we need to go to the deserts, we need to go to the monastery, but everywhere you have the challenges. The best way, if living in the society, uh, we can practice Christian life. We can fight the challenges through living out the life which is pleasing to Him, living out the life of virtue. This is just a small conclusion for today. We, as I said earlier, as a family, as mothers, you have a greater role. We all have a greater role to educate, to equip our children, to understand, to make them understand, to make them really make Christ-like life the main, especially as we talk about sexuality, as we talk about marriage. All our kids, they need to understand what the real essence of marital life is. May God bless each one of us. May the Lord have mercy upon us and strengthen us to lead, to challenge, to fight those challenges which we face on a day-to-day basis, to lead a more Christ-like life and a life which is pleasing to God. May God bless each one of us.
താങ്ക് യു റംബാച്ച. അനുഗ്രഹീതമായ ക്ലാസ്സിന് എല്ലാവരുടെയും പേരുള്ള പ്രത്യേകമായ നന്ദി അറിയിക്കുന്നു. നാളത്തേക്കുള്ള അനൗൺസ്മെന്റ്സ് ജനറൽ സെക്രട്ടറി നിങ്ങളെ ഇപ്പോൾ അറിയിക്കും.
താങ്ക് യു അച്ഛാ. നാളെ നമുക്ക് ഫേസ് സ്റ്റഡി ക്ലാസ് ഉണ്ട്. PC ജോർജ് അച്ഛൻ നയിക്കുന്ന. എല്ലാവരും ദയവ് ചെയ്ത് അതിനകത്ത് സംബന്ധിക്കുക. എല്ലാവർക്കും ഗുഡ് നൈറ്റ്.
നമുക്ക് പ്രാർത്ഥിച്ച് അവസാനിപ്പിക്കാം. റംബാച്ച, ഞാൻ പ്രാർത്ഥിച്ചോട്ടെ? ശുദ്ധമുള്ള പിതാവേ, ശുദ്ധമുള്ള തിരുനാമത്താൽ ഞങ്ങളെ നീ കാത്തുകൊള്ളണമേ. രക്ഷിതാവായ പുത്ര, ജയമുള്ള നിന്റെ ശ്രീവായാൽ ഞങ്ങളെ നീ മറച്ചുകൊള്ളണമേ. ശുദ്ധമുള്ള റൂഹ, ശുദ്ധമുള്ള നിന്റെ കുടിയിരിപ്പിന് ഭവനങ്ങളായി ഞങ്ങളെ ക്ഷമിക്കണമേ. ഞങ്ങളുടെ ദൈവമായ കർത്താവെ, നേരമൊക്കെയിലും എല്ലാ സമയങ്ങളിലും നിന്റെ ദൈവത്വത്തിന്റെ ചെറുകം കീഴിൽ എന്നേക്കും ഞങ്ങളെ നീ മറച്ചുകൊള്ളണമേ. ആമേൻ. ബെനഡിക്ഷൻ.
ബാറക്കുമോ. പിതാവാം ദൈവത്തിന്റെ സ്നേഹവും പുത്രന്റെ പ്രാർത്ഥന കൃപയും പരിശുദ്ധ റൂഹായുടെ സംബന്ധവും ആവാസവും ദൈവമായ കർത്താവെ, ഞങ്ങളുടെ എല്ലാ കുടുംബങ്ങളുടെ മേലും ഞങ്ങളുടെ എല്ലാ നല്ല ആവശ്യങ്ങളുടെ മേലും ഇപ്പോഴും എല്ലായ്പ്പോഴും എന്നേക്കൊണ്ടായിരിക്കുമാറാണമേ.
ആമേൻ. ഗുഡ് നൈറ്റ്.